Thank you, Charlie, for your don't know talk. Are there any questions? Charlie, you're unmuted. Do you have a question?
Uh, so I'll think of one.
I have a question.
Sure.
I wasn't going to ask it because I know it's too much thinking, but um, okay. So at the class yesterday, we talked about that when you see it, truth. The tree is green, and we talked that everybody sees green differently. It's just pointing to the truth that what you see is what you see, what you hear is what you hear, and so on and so forth. So you know, um, I was that was still going on in my head. And I thought, well, sometimes I may perceive something, and to me, it's something comes up, and I'll think, well, that's just patriarchal BS, and I know I'm kind of a little bit sensitive about that. So then I think, that's just you. That's not really what it was. You misunderstood the situation. It's not really that. But then I thought, well, maybe sometimes it really is patriarchal BS, you know, because, but then I thought, well, I see it one way, but somebody else is going to see it a different way. And so, it still is just a little bit confusing because then, and I understand that maybe that it has to do with, are you seeing it clearly? But maybe I really am seeing it clearly, and it really is patriarchal BS. And somebody else who looks at it and says, no, that really wasn't, you're just being too sensitive, maybe their mirror is not clear. But then I think, that's just too much thinking and too much words, and maybe I should just drop it all. So any insight you would have into that, or comments, I would appreciate. Do I just drop it, or what do I do? I don't know.
Acknowledge your truth. Okay? And sometimes you speak your truth when you feel that speaking will be productive. And sometimes you keep silence when you feel that speaking will, in some sense, make it worse. And sometimes you really don't know whether to speak or to be silent. It's really hard. It's really hard to know what to do. And this don't know that Charlie was talking about, this don't know is the thing that allows us the um, the stance that allows us to have a better chance at seeing what is appropriate and what is productive. Because if you hold on, I always speak up. I always keep silence. If you hold on to this, then you can't see what's going on, you know? So I'll tell a story. When I guess I'd been practicing for a few years, and I went out to sit a retreat with Zen Master Sung-san, my teacher in Colorado. And he's the founder of the Quantum School of Zen, and he died in the early 2000s. And so I went out to Colorado to sit a retreat. And at the time, he would always tell this story. When you're some kind of teacher, any kind of teacher, you at any given time, there are like 3 or 4 or 5 stories that you rely on, and then they shift, and then like in another couple of years it's a different 3 or 4. But at that point in time, there was this one story that he relied on, and I don't even remember the point of it. I just remember that in the story there was this beautiful young woman standing on the side of a road. She had a flat tire, and she's standing by the side of the road waiting for help to come because she has this beautiful silk clothes and maybe high heels, and her nails are done and her hair is done, and she can't get herself messy fixing a flat tire, so she's just waiting. It's just this helpless beautiful woman waiting on the side of the road. And I was and am quite feminist, and at that point in my life, it was my early 30s, I had learned how to change my oil, and I had learned how to change a tire, and I was very proud of myself for being able to do that, because women of my generation were not supposed to do that, but of course I was doing that. Not that well. I figured out after a while it'd be better to have other people do it because I didn't do it well, but anyway, I knew how to do it, and I was very proud of that. And the thought of this helpless woman, this trope of this helpless woman standing by the side of the road, and it wasn't even, I mean, he didn't even realize how sexist it was. It just didn't even occur to him how sexist it was. And I was sitting there just fuming. I'd heard it one too many times. At that point, this was before we had a kid. So at that point, I'd sit like in Kansas and Cambridge and Providence and California and in Colorado. I was always going around and around trying to sit with Zen Master Bon Hae. And so I'd heard this story like one too many times, and I just sat there, like, he's such a sexist. I mean, I asked him a question, isn't that a sexist story? And he kind of, got away from it. He wiggled out of it, and so I'm sitting there after the talk, just fuming. I mean, you could practically see the steam coming out of my head. I'm just sitting there, just fuming. He's so sexist. He's so horrible. He's a horrible teacher. He's so sexist. I'm just going on and on in my mind. This like 25-minute, 30-minute period of practice where I could be sitting there like clearing my mind, and instead I'm holding on really tightly. So as soon as the chugpi hit to start walking meditation, I was out of there. I didn't even wait for my place in line. I was out of there. I was going to find him, because he never sat with us. He was always doing something else during sitting. So I went to find him, and he was doing this calligraphy, very refined calligraphy. So he was a wonderful calligrapher, and teaching someone how to do calligraphy. And I burst into the room, and I said to him, you make this sexist story. Why do you always make this sexist story? And I'm going on and on and on like this. You're so sexist. It's so horrible. Women are strong. Women are, blah, blah, blah. Women are not helpless, blah, 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 blah. And I'm going on and on and on. And he stands up and he goes, I never made woman. I mean, it was still a sexist story, And he still had, I mean, he empowered women, he made women teachers, and so on and so forth. For his time and place, he was a strong supporter of women, but it was a sexist story, right? And he was, in that moment, he was sexist. But I was making it. I was holding on to it. He let it go, And I don't know if he ever told that story again, but I was the one who was holding on. So when something happens and you just feel it, then you may speak up, you may be silent. Don't try to say, oh, I wonder if it's, maybe it's, don't worry about that. Trust your perceptions. Trust your perceptions. And then trust how to respond. Okay? So thank you for your question. Ting, you have a question.
Yes, and it's this morning when I turned on my phone, I saw this wonderful video of a monk walk in such a way with an umbrella. It's raining, it's in Japan. And then just from that walk, and I thought that must be Harada Rashi, and it was really him. It was this morning, it was kind of a live thing. So I thought about you because you used to go to sit retreats after retreats with him when I first started to practice. So my question is, all the years that I knew you were practicing, but I wasn't interested in practice in the math department for years, that you were always gone every summer for some sort of solo retreat. So could you Could you say something about why in the world you did so many solo retreats? Sometimes is, 90 days, sometimes is half of 90 days, but as far as I remember, a long, long time in Snowfall that you sort of MIA in the summer. So this is a very wonderful thing. And I also wanted to know why all these solo retreats.
Okay, so it wasn't every summer. I've done about, let's see, I think it was 5 longish solo retreats. Um, and so I've done mostly 3 and 4 week retreats, and then once I did a 90-day retreat. And solo retreats are really wonderful because when you're on a solo retreat, there's nothing to distract you. And which means that you see how your mind distracts you. You really see it. When you're on a retreat with other people, and retreats with other people are wonderful too. And I really recommend, long before you do a solo retreat, you should do a bunch of retreats with other people. Because when you do a retreat with other people, even if it's on Zoom, somehow you're supporting each other. You're really helping each other focus. You're supporting each other in the Dharma. And also the mind that wants to make things comfortable, you can't get away with it because when it's time to start sitting, you have to start sitting. When it's time to chant, you have to chant. When it's time to bow, you have to bow. And if you're in person together, even the eating forms are very formal. You can't pick up your bowl until the signal is given. You have to clean your bowls in a certain way. And so the schedule is most important on a retreat, and you learn to adhere to a schedule by doing retreats with other people. And but after you do that for a while, then maybe you want to do a solo retreat. So what happens on a solo retreat is you don't have any excuses. So maybe you're on a group retreat, and maybe the person next to you at meals, if it's in person, is chewing really loudly. Or maybe it's a Zoom retreat and you notice that a certain person is kind of wiggling all the time, maybe scratching their head, right? And so you get pissed off, right? You get pissed off because this person is chewing noisily. You get pissed off because this person is wiggling, and you can kind of project. You don't realize who's getting pissed off. It's more like this person is terrible. You can kind of project that. Or maybe somebody does something that seems really wonderful, like Ting sees this video of Shoto Harada. I thought he was still in Washington State. I guess he's back in Japan, of Shoto Harada walking, and you say, "Oh, what a wonderful person! I want to be like this person. Look at the way they walk. Even the way they walk is so beautiful." Or maybe you're just feeling, you're really tired on a retreat, and you're just feeling really awful, on an in-person retreat, and you just don't know how you're going to do it, and then someone flashes you a smile, and you go, "I'm loved." So when you're with other people, you can be distracted like that. You don't understand where it's coming from. You can just project. This person's awful. This person's wonderful. This person hates me. This person loves me. And you just do that all the time. And but on a solo retreat, that doesn't happen. You're the one who's going to get up in the morning at 4:30 or 5 or whatever your schedule tells you to do. You're the one who's going to do bows at this time. You're the one who's going to chant at this time. You're the one who's going to sit at this time. You're the one who's going to do these things. Nobody's making you do it. If you wanted to sleep all day, you could do it. But, why would you do that? You're on a solo retreat. So so there's this self-discipline, and you really see your mind. And especially on a very long retreat. I mean, even on a 3 or 4 week retreat, but especially on a 90-day retreat. I remember when I went on my 90-day retreat, and there was a friend of mine was having real problems in her family. And there was one family member who was causing her a lot of problems. And I remember, the first like couple of weeks of the retreat, I was thinking about what should my friend do about this family member. And then I realized, wait a minute, I've been gone for 2 weeks. I have no idea what's going on. Maybe they're best friends now. Maybe maybe they're no longer speaking, and so they can't cause each other trouble. You know, it's like you just, oh, Charlie talked about don't know. You realize you really don't know anything. You just have these ideas about things, but you really don't know. And it's because you're by yourself, on top of this mountain or in the middle of this desert or back in your garage or whatever it is. It's because you're completely by yourself, not talking to other human beings, that you can see, oh, my mind is making this. It's actually not how things are. Oh, you know? So there's this discipline and there's this kind of mirror on a solo retreat that doesn't happen on group retreats. But group retreats are also wonderful. I don't want to put them down. They're both wonderful. And you need to do a whole bunch of group retreats before you do a solo retreat. Otherwise, you won't keep the schedule and, you'll just be lost in whatever fantasy land we usually live in. So I recommend group retreats before solo retreats. But yeah, that's solo retreats. They're very, very wonderful. And yeah, you just see your mind spinning and oh, look at that. My mind is spinning. Ah, how interesting. Instead of having any way to act on it because there are no other people around. You can't yell at somebody, you can't hug somebody. It's just, oh, there's my mind spinning. And then every now and then it stops, and you just see, you just hear, you just taste, you just touch. Yeah. So that's solo retreats. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's my experience of solo retreats. So are there any other questions? Well, it's about time to stop. So let's stop the recording.